The past 5 years I've been researching the so-called Missa graeca, which appears in Western manuscripts between the 9th and the 12th century. It is usually said to contain 4 ordinary chants with Greek texts, transliterated with Latin letters, so that people without any knowledge of Greek could read it too. These chants are the Gloria, Doxa, the Credo, Pistevo, the Sanctus, Aios, and the Agnus Dei, Amnos tu Theou. Approximately 60 manuscripts are known today from the 9th to the 12th century, which contain one or more of the Missa graeca-Chants. About 90% show melodies written with Western neumes. Geographically speaking, we can find these manuscripts in the East and West Frankish area, which comprise today's France, Germany and Switzerland. A few sources can also be found in England and Italy. The earliest specimens date from the 1870s and are 4 sacramentaries. On the slide here, 3 of them are shown. The 4th from St. Petersburg is not available. Paris 2291 is the only one that sets the beginning of the doxa to music. All the others are unneumed. Paris 2290 is the one containing all 4 hymns. The actual flourishing time of the Missa graeca, however, dates from the time between approximately 930 and 1050. Probably this high time of the Greek texted chants is connected to the emergence of the so-called tropes in Western medieval music. There are 2 centres which contain the most manuscripts with Missa graeca chants: the Benedictine monastery of St. Gall and Limoges in Aquitaine. The question that has been exciting researchers during the past 150 years concerns not only the texts of the Missa graeca, but above all the melodies. Could they be actual borrowings from Byzantium? One group of scientists claims that they really are chants with Byzantine melodies, while the other group is of the exact opposite opinion. Until today, however, these melodies have, with a few exceptions, hardly ever been examined by Byzantine scholars. To be honest, comparisons of Western and Byzantine melodies are difficult for a variety of reasons. For instance, only the doxa in the manuscript Law 263 can be properly transcribed, as it is already noted on 4 lines. Also, Paris 1118 shows neumes so far developed that they can be considered for a transcription into the modern stave system. The Pistevo, Aios and Amnos tu Theou, though, exist only in adiastematic versions. So far, transcriptions exist by, among others, Michel Huglot, Kenneth Levy, Jacques Hanchin or Charles Atkinson. Furthermore, we are dealing here with 2 completely different neume systems, the one from the Western sources and those from Byzantium. Another difficulty arises due to the fact that the sources in East and West stem from a different period in time. As we have seen, the first neumed examples in the West date to the 10th century. The Byzantine sources, however, transmit the chants only in manuscripts from the 14th century onwards. Before that time, they were not written down. Because of this late transmission in Byzantium, we are dealing with very melismatic, that is, embellished melodies, which might have been much more syllabic a couple of centuries earlier. And another problem exists. While in the West all 4 chants are included and chanted in the liturgy, in Byzantium only the doxa and the aios have melodies. The Pistevo and the Amnos tu Theou were never sung. Thus, there remain only 2 melodies to be compared. Due to the limited time for the paper, I will concentrate on the doxa and the aios, leaving out the pistevo and the amnostu theu. There exist several different Western doxa versions. The first one here is the standard or standalone version. It is employed in the manuscripts when the doxa appears with Greek text only and not with an interlinear Latin translation. The melody is very stable, as it can be found already in the earliest source, Paris 2291, as well as in later manuscripts such as Paris 1118, with near the estimatic point neumes but no clefs. The slide here shows Huglot's transcription. The doxa melody seems to be connected to a mix of probably more than one Western melodic source, but it is more closely connected to Gloria 14 of the Graduale Romanum, which is why Atkinson would call it 14 Variation 1. There is a second tradition of the Western doxa melody, which is used when the chant appears parallel or interlinear with the Latin text, which is primarily the case in the St. Gall manuscripts. There is no codex that contains a diastematic version, hence there is also no transcription available. Atkinson has nevertheless shown that this melody is not completely independent, but connected to the before shown standard or standalone version. So he names this 14 Variation 1, as we said before. Primarily, the interlinear version contains less melismata than the standalone melody and gives thus an overall more syllabic impression. Another more syllabic variant of the standard or standalone melody can be found in three late 10th century manuscripts, namely Düsseldorf D2 from Essen and two codices from Mainz, one housed in London British Library today and the other one at the Austrian National Library in Vienna. As only a transcription of the Western standalone version is possible, we can only compare this melody with the Byzantine one, found in the earliest Akoluthia manuscript, Athens 2458. As can be easily discerned with the help of my transcription of the Byzantine melody, there are no common features except for the very first upward movement of both melodies. Furthermore, we have to take into consideration that in Byzantium we don't find a complete doxa set to music. Usually only the first couple of verses are neumed. There exist also several melodies for the Western arios, sanctus. This melody here has come down only in ariastematic neumes. Huglot nevertheless undertook a transcription on the basis of Paris 1871 from Moissac. Livy took up Huglot's transcription in his study on the Byzantine Sanctus, but transposed it a fifth upwards from C to G. The melody, as it is found in Paris 1871, is also the principal melody in manuscripts from Aquitania, from southern as well as from central France. It is mostly syllabic, with only small melismata on the first syllable of aios and on the last syllable of the final aios. Livy describes the above melody as follows, I quote, "The important features will be apparent at once. The three melismatic arcs on the triple acclamation sanctus, the limited range of a fourth from G to C, with downward and upward extensions in the Aquitanian version, and the essential character of liturgical recitative rather than independent melody. We are dealing evidently with the repetitions and elaborations of a simple formula, not with a freely composed melody." Unquote. Another version, but seemingly connected to the West Frankish one, can be found in East Frankish manuscripts, such as the one from Vienna 1888, the one from the British Library, and Düsseldorf D2. The exact degree of connection cannot be determined precisely due to the adiamastic nature of the neumes, but it becomes apparent that the melody in these three East Frankish sources is more consistent among them than with the melody of the West Frankish codices shown above. Another, slightly more melismatic version is included in the manuscripts from St. Gall and from Germany. Livy is thus correct when he explains that, I quote, "There are in effect two German traditions. A simpler one is represented by the London and Düsseldorf manuscripts, and it is found again in a French troper from Nevers, Paris 9449. A more florid tradition is found in the remaining sources from St. Gall, Regensburg and Heidenheim. The characteristic melismas on the opening triple sanctus are basically the same in both of these, and are related to the version in Aquitanian sources. It seems likely that they're all variants of a single chant." Unquote. Atkinson concurs with this statement, explaining that one of the East Frankish melodies constitutes only a more embellished variant. This more embellished melody normally puts a melisma on the last syllable of the words, example given on Os from Aios, Giri Os, Sabaoth, and so on. However, the melisma on the first syllable of Aios can also be found in the less embellished East Frankish version. Nevertheless, the setting here does not display any melismata on, for instance, ge, I, yi, tis, and some other words, where the more syllabic versions show small melismata. On the last syllable of erchomenos, both East Frankish versions employ a melisma. Hugues not only undertook a reconstruction of the simple, non-melismatic version shown before, but also transcribed the setting found in three North Italian manuscripts. Like with the doxa, we find settings of the Byzantine Aios only in manuscripts from the 14th century onwards, such as again Athens 24:58. Both Livy and Moran used this manuscript for their transcriptions. Its version of the Aios is the least ornamented of the Byzantine melodies for the chant listed here. Moran also consulted two other codices, one from Sinai 1294 and Barberinus Grecus 300. They all show a more or less consistent melody. Livy states the same when he writes, I quote, "Through the many copies of the Akolothea, this chant, assigned to the second mode authentic, remains basically the same. There is only this one formula given for the text." Unquote. In his study, Livy surmised that, I quote, "If we compare our Eastern and Western chants for the Sanctus, the basic identity of the Western chant with Greek text of the 10th century and the Byzantine chant of the 14th may seem reasonably certain." Unquote. Thus, Livy assumed that there do exist some elemental concordances between the Byzantine Aios and the Western Greek texted one. Furthermore, Livy hypothesized that the version in Athens 24:58 and the other 14th and 15th century manuscripts, which was meant to be sung by the choirs, goes back to a presumed simpler prototype for the congregation, of which the Western melody might preserve a remnant. Thus far, however, no evidence for such a prototype has been found. The actual melodic comparison looks like this. A common point indeed is the beginning of the Byzantine and Western Aios, where the melody on the first syllable, Aios, is the same. As the comparison of the two melodies shows, both share the same melodic formula for the first syllable of Ios, an ascent from G to C, then a descent back to A. The Byzantine melody then includes a longer melisma on the final syllable of Ios, whereas the Western one only uses B, A there. However, a major difference concerns the repetition of the word Ios. The Byzantine version repeats the same melody for all three iterations, but the Western one exhibits a melodic variant the third time. The further the melodies advance, the more different and disparate they become. There is one striking feature in the Byzantine melody, namely that of the gratimo-iboron, a sign that combines a iboroi denoting 2 seconds downwards with a gratima for lengthening the notes. We can't find this melodic formula taken over into the Western chant though. Also, the Byzantine melody is much more formulaic than the Western one. The text too shows differences. For example, Kyrios or Theos is not a Byzantine version of the Ios text, and this Doxis Su is not included in a Latin version. What can we conclude from this very condensed presentation of my analysis? As far as I can tell now, the Western melodies are purely Western inventions. Byzantine melodic material cannot be discerned, neither in the doxa nor in the Ios. Rather, a mixture of various Western melodies seem to have served to create these chants. But then you may ask, why use Greek at all if these chants were purely Western invention? My hypothesis concerns the fact that the Greek language was held in very high esteem in the West during the Middle Ages. It was one of the holy languages of the Bible, and thus not regarded as something belonging to a foreign culture, but rather to belonging also to Western heritage. As a holy language, it did not have to be understood by all people. Just think how long Latin was used in the Catholic Church. Thus, Greek was probably used for very festal occasions, for making masses for certain saints, for example, even more elaborate and splendid. The language was more important in those times than the melodies themselves. Thank you very much for your attention, for listening to my paper. A longer version of these comparisons and analysis you will find in my book on the Missa graeca, which will be published at the end of 2020 at Brill Publishers.